Hi, I'm Max Scheida with Lincoln Traps, and today we're going to review how to install a complete one-way bearing or clutch assembly onto a Lincoln Sporter. So this may be required if your machines are a bit older and the clutch either needed to be rebuilt or if you purchased a new one. This is how you would receive either a rebuilt or new clutch from us. So the main one-way bearing is this gold colored housing, and then below that you'll have a crank with a collar installed where your spring will attach. Your arm holder will be installed, and then finally a new bearing will be installed at the end of the shaft to support the magazine. So as you can see, the machine that I have here has no clutch currently installed. The guard ring and guard arm has been removed, and the magazine has been removed. Now, when removing the clutch assembly from the machine, you want to remove the magazine or else there will be added weight on this plate that is unsupported. So in order not to potentially bend anything while the clutch is not supporting the front of this plate, we remove the magazine. But to go ahead and begin installing this, I'm going to remove the 4 mounting bolts that were included. And I'm also going to remove the hardware that is included for the flange bearing. And then I'm going to install the flange bearing at these 2 holes in the magazine plate. So the included hardware are these 2 carriage head bolts and 2 nylock nuts. So the carriage head bolts will go down through the plate and through both pieces of the flange bearing. And then I'll thread my nuts on to hold it in place. And for right now, I'm just going to keep this loose until I start the housing mounting hardware as well. So I'm going to keep everything loose until I've got all of the hardware started. So now I'm going to rotate the housing until the holes line up with the holes in the casting of the frame. Now, before I go ahead and install these mounting bolts, I'm going to apply some Loctite 242 to make sure that these bolts do not back out due to any vibration, and it also helps ensure that we're sealing the clutch housing from any potential moisture getting into it. So I'm just going to apply a small drop to each of these bolts. And then I'll go ahead and line up the holes and get these bolts started. Now for right now, I'm just going in a couple of threads to hold the housing in place, and we'll go back through and tighten them in a moment. All right, so now that I've got all of them started, I can go back through and tighten all of them. I typically like to run them all down most of the way before I tighten them completely. So with the 4 housing mounting bolts tight,
We can now tighten the 2 flange bearing bolts.
all right, so now our whole clutch assembly is secured to the machine, but our throwing arm is still not attached to our arm holder. So I'm going to go ahead and install a new standard throwing arm. And that just simply sets in place here on the arm holder. And I'm going to use some new hardware here and secure this into place. Again, I'm just going to start the first mounting bolt, and then I'm going to start the second mounting bolt. And now with a 5/32 wrench and a 7/16, I'm going to tighten up both of those. So now that we've secured the arm to the arm holder, there's one more critical step that we need to address. The arm holder is still free to move up and down on the main shaft at this point. We will need to adjust that in order to make sure that the arm is contacting the target in the correct location. So on your target, there's the most outer diameter, then there's the throwing rim, and then there's the dome. We want to make sure that the polyurethane on our throwing arm is contacting the throwing rim on our target. And what we also want to make sure is that it's not going too low and pinching this shoulder of the target, and it's not going too high and potentially hitting the dome of the target. So in order to do this, we're going to go ahead and place a target here in kind of the cocked position, and then we can rotate the arm around. Now, you may get to a point where the arm cannot be rotated any further. And this is because this stud that comes from the bottom of this collar will hit the stud that comes from the gearbox. So in order to be able to drive the arm farther, we'll need to use the on-off release switch on the control box. And what we can do is turn that on momentarily in order to jog the motor. So you can see as I turn the switch on and off, I'm actually running the motor. And right now we don't have a mainspring installed, so nothing's under tension here. There's not really a big chance for something to go whipping around under any spring tension, but the indexing linkage of the machine will still move. So keep in mind that there will be some moving parts here, and you want to make sure your hands are not in any of those locations. So now that we've run the motor and it's kind of out of our way, we can take the throwing arm and push it into kind of the cocked position. So when we say the target is in the cocked position, it's just up against this brush, the rim is back against this guide bar, and we're going to look at the arm as it sits right up against the target. So in order to look at the alignment of the arm relative to the target, it's best to kind of get behind the machine and look under the magazine plate to view the relationship between the arm and the target. Now, what we're looking for is for the top of this polyurethane to be almost exactly even with the top of this rim. So if I can point with a screwdriver here, we're looking at the top of this rim of the target to be very close to even with the top of this polyurethane material on the throwing arm. And right now it's a little tough to see, but it's a hair high. So we are going to make an adjustment to that. So adjusting the height of the throwing arm can take a little bit of trial and error, but we're going to go ahead and make an adjustment, and then we will double check ourselves. So I've just brought the arm around to make it a little more accessible to us. If you need to, again, you can turn the motor on and off using the rocker switch on the control box to get it out of your way and allow you to rotate this arm around. So the way I'm going to move this down is by using a small mallet. Now, when I strike this, I never want to strike the actual throwing arm out here where I could potentially bend it. I only ever want to hit on the arm holder itself because that will not bend. Now, this shouldn't take a whole lot of movement, but what I like to do, because it can be a little bit difficult to see how far you're moving, is place my fingers kind of on the main shaft here so I can feel what movement I'm getting as I strike this. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a few strikes and see if I can feel it move just slightly. And that actually moved a bit. So now I'm going to rotate the arm back around into the cocked position. And let's see how that impacted our alignment. So I've come back around to the rear of the machine to check my alignment again. And again, I'm checking the top of the polyurethane with respect to the top of this shoulder on the target. And I hit it down slightly, and now they are almost perfectly even. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten it up there. So we can now remove our target from this area, and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch Allen wrench socket on a breaker bar, and I'm going to tighten this bolt and clamp the arm holder in place. And you want to make sure this is good and tight. All right. And one last thing we want to do here is, again, check our alignment now that we've tightened it, in case anything is moved in the process of tightening it. So I'm going to place the target back here in the cocked position. And it looks like what's happened here is when I tightened it, the arm actually drew back up slightly. And I'll try to show that in a moment here. So it may be difficult to see, but now that I have tightened the arm holder, the top of the polyurethane has come up a bit and is now a good bit above the shoulder on my target. So I'm going to loosen the arm holder and readjust this and give this another shot. So I've loosened the arm and made another adjustment here, or the arm holder rather. I've loosened and slid down slightly. So now the polyurethane on my arm is actually slightly lower than the top of the throwing rim on the target. So now when I tighten it, if it draws up, we will see where it ends up. Now, I just went ahead and tightened the arm holder, and the arm did draw up again, but since I compensated it a little low before, they have now ended up almost perfectly even. So the top of the polyurethane and the top of this shoulder on the target are almost perfectly even. So now that I have tightened the arm holder in place, I also want to check the alignment of my arm with respect to this plate when the target is out here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the arm out to the end of the launch plate here. And again, if you need to jog the motor out of the way, you can go ahead and do that. And I want to show a close-up here of what we're looking for. So again, I want to have the top of the polyurethane on my arm close to even to the top of this edge. So right now, the arm is definitely a little bit high. So we're going to go ahead and adjust that. And how we adjust that is with this bolt right here. So we will need to loosen this bottom nut. And then the other nut will act as our height adjustment. So as I turn that, I'm actually raising the height of the launch plate in order to align my arm to the target. And we want to end up about like that. Again, where the top of the polyurethane is even with this rim on the target. So once we're happy with the position of that, we can go ahead and tighten this lower nut again. And then I just like to confirm that that didn't move anything. And it looks like we're good there. And then as one final check, I'm gonna bring the arm completely around again. So I'm gonna put my target back in this position. And right now my motor's in the way. So I'm gonna go ahead and run that for a moment. And then I'll be able to rotate my throwing arm around. And then I'm just gonna check my alignment of the arm relative to the target one more time, the same way that we have been. And it looks like we're fairly well aligned there. So we've now successfully installed our clutch assembly. So now with our clutch assembly reinstalled and correctly adjusted, you can go ahead and reinstall your spring and reinstall your magazine, and the machine will be ready to use. I hope this video was helpful. If there are any other videos of tutorials that you would like to see, please drop us a comment below.